episode 189 Above Ground Podcast, Falling to Pieces.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Will Foley and TPP, are not medical professionals, and this is not medical advice. Both Will and TPP have firsthand experience with mental illness. They have their own perspective and own thoughts on mental health challenges. Above Ground Podcast was birthed to help those who struggle with their mental health through honest dialogue. By speaking openly and sharing tools, they foster connection. By fostering connection, they convey hope. With connection and hope, we can continue to increase awareness. These conversations aim to break down the walls while building stronger foundations for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the perspective. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley. Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 189 of Above Ground Podcast. Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below. Thank you very much for joining us. First, some order of business. Saturday, February 4th, me, Will Foley, will be opening for my good friends in Black Belt Jones at the Fuse Box, Saturday, September 4th, 12 Central Avenue, Albany. Here, if you're in Nippertown, the 518, I am going to be opening a really cool rock show, man, with Black Belt Jones, Psychomantium, and Same Old Rat. Same Old Rat, it was formerly known as Dance Cancer. Going to be doing a show, man, $10 at the door, 8 o'clock showtime. I'll be hitting the stage probably about 8:10. Maybe Tim, you'll be with me. I'm not sure. The offer is always open for Tim to share the stage, man, and sit in with some percussion action. So that'll be happening. And then on Sunday, March 5th, that's right, his book discussion and signing got moved because of the Super Bowl, and it will be on Sunday, March 5th at 6 p.m. at our favorite metaphysical boutique in Nippertown, in the 518, man, the Sage's Circle at 443 Saratoga Road, Glenville. If you're interested in going, please go to www.sageevents.com or call 518-369-7018 and reserve your space. Tim will be discussing his book, Never Underestimate the Power of You. So please come on out and support. Please come on out and support local live music on September 4th, man. We can't have a live music scene if we don't have people come out. So please come out now. Episode 189, Falling to Pieces. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you cannot serve below.
Whoa, those are heavy words, man. That's a lot for episode 189, right?
189.
Whoa, episode 189, falling to pieces. What pieces are we falling to?
Well, I think maybe we're missing pieces. And
I think we are missing pieces.
Pieces of the puzzle are missing, and they're falling apart. And maybe people have lost their way because of that, because they need that puzzle that's finished. You know, they need something to reference where to go.
But do they pay attention to those references and guideposts? Mm-hmm. Or do we ignore them? Is that part of the falling to pieces?
Could be. Yeah, that's part of it, I think.
Because I've wondered if we take all these pieces of ourselves, whatever those pieces are, whether it's your culture, it's your religion, it's your indoctrination, it's your fears, it's your likes, all these things combine to make a person, right? How do we separate those pieces to realize what pieces fit anymore? And do we realize that those pieces fit? Or is it something, is it something that we are not ready to tackle? Because you can put a puzzle together, but until you put the epoxy over it and seal it you're never going to be able to display that puzzle, which means that puzzle can fall apart at any moment. What becomes the epoxy that holds that puzzle together?
I think that would be, I'm going to go with, since we're talking about pieces, we did a thing called Pieces to Wellness, and I think
That's true.
I think that can be a part of this. I think pieces. I think the epoxy isn't just like a it's not this all natural 100% epoxy. I think it's a little bit of this, it's a percentage of this. I think it's a concoction.
Do you think putting the pieces back together is more kintsugi than it is puzzle creating? Anybody doesn't know what kintsugi is? Kintsugi is the ancient art of repairing pottery with gold. And the idea is that it represents that something that breaks that is very valuable to you can be built stronger by adding the epoxy and the gold and sealing it back up together and making a new piece out of something that was old. And we do that a lot. Obviously, we talk a lot about that. I mean, shit, we've been doing this for almost 4 years. We've been talking about this every week.
Yeah,
Putting yourself back together.
Well, I think both. I think that would be a good handy tool to have. Is that some pieces need maybe fixing. Some pieces could be missing like a part of an edge or something. So you need to fill it in with some gold or whatever. And I think we've also talked about the daily activities of living.
Sure.
And your sleep, your exercise,
your sleep, your hygiene,
walking, kind
all
of
it.
Food, nutrition. If there's any medication that you take, supplements, and then another thing that pops up often here is connection. Engaging in activities with others,
healthy activities with others.
Thank you.
Let's be specific about that because
that's fair.
We don't want to say that all forms of connection are necessarily good or bad. Granted, if you're in recovery and your friends are all users, it's hard to separate yourself from that unless you've been forced to, or you have the strength to, or a lot of people that I think that's part of the cycle of addiction is that people make connections with that, and then it's a form of connection because everything is connection.
Yeah, and then you begin to identify it as that,
and then your body physically becomes addicted to a lot of those things, and then that creates a whole other conundrum of
and then
of
the
cycle.
Habits become the reals, and then you just unconsciously go through your life doing things that aren't necessarily helpful.
Well, speaking of helpful and stuff, where do you think self-help comes into this? Because a lot of people, we just flipped the calendar a few weeks ago. Every gym memberships go up at the beginning, but then people are out of the gym by February. Everybody gets some sort of self-help book for Christmas, I'm sure, especially now. People subscribe to apps, people subscribe to programs, people subscribe to things. Why do you think we do that yet never follow through on the information?
Well, before I answer that, you can also go to Amazon and buy my book, Never Underestimate the Power of You.
Another self-help book.
DIY
project.
It's another help yourself book.
That's right. I like that.
As I call it. Because I think, and I say this in the book, is there's stages to this, and I think that if you're in the right stage, then these books are extremely helpful. But like with anything else, whether it's a book or it's a medical professional, a doctor, therapist, whatever it is, mentor, they can only do so much. Like, you can acquire help and get this information, but until you integrate it. I can't even say it.
Integrate
it. It's really kind of just there, it's going to be there and good to have, but in situations you need to start putting it into action and applying it.
Right. Wisdom is wonderful if you look at things in a growth mindset. I have not always had a growth mindset. This has only been something that I've been really trying to work on and develop over the last few years. I mean, really hard working.
You think you've had like more of a fixed mindset?
I've had more of a fixed mindset for sure. Absolutely. More of a fixed mindset. And I didn't realize, as much as I'm open-minded about a lot of things, I'm very closed about a lot of things too. And until you recognize things like that, then you're missing pieces. Because in order to fix the puzzle, you got to have all the pieces. And we know that people create pieces out of some cardboard and stuff. Like, I know people have put puzzles together over the years that have made a piece because the piece was missing. They try to paint it or they try to color it in to make it look like the background. But until the integration happens, again, gasoline is not power. Knowledge is not power. It's only potential power. You can have all the gasoline you want, but if you don't have a vehicle to put it in to drive off, there's no power there. It's just a petroleum-based liquid that does nothing except for sit in a tank
and stink.
Actually, I like the smell of gasoline, but I love it. But I like weird smells too. So,
but I think there's this is one of those, I guess, pieces that I know some people think it's saturated and there's many pieces of that side of it, of the books and stuff. But I do think that it's it's good that it's there. For me personally, I've used audiobooks to help me get where I am and currently going, because I'm still learning, I'm still reading, and open to learning more and hearing different points of views and perceptions on things. So I think that it's a valuable piece. I think for most people, some of the missing pieces could just be the simple things in life that are, basically simple, just like simplistic living and, just being kind,
I agree. And I want to preface this with something. I'm not saying that books are bad. That's not what I'm saying. Because the only way we learn is through books, whether it's audiobooks or the written page. Education guides, all that stuff. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to say, and this is kind of where the concept came from for this, is that why don't we put these pieces together? Why do we feel the need, and me included, to have 50 books about the same thing?
Well, you're right. And I think, this is my opinion, I think that there's sort of two sides to this. I think one of them is that we get these books and we read and we read and we read, and we're 10 books in. What do? We get another 10 books in. And we read and we read and we get another 10 books in, which is great, but it's almost like we don't stop. And that's, for me, I guess either way, you can do it with a paper book or an audio book or anything. But for me, having the audio book, I'll go back. I'll take screenshots or something like that and go back to that part and kind of listen back and take notes and sit down and really focus and go, what is actually going on here? And and then again, take other books and use pieces to those books to combine that one thing that you're concentrating on, if that makes sense. Like take little bits from here and there, or if the whole book itself makes sense to you, then obviously take the whole book. But I do think, for me, some of these books, again, stages. So if you're in a certain stage and you're reading a book that might be for a stage that's 5 stages above where you're at, it's going to be hard to kind of comprehend. And, some of these books they'll tell you all about anxiety. They'll give you the statistics and they'll tell you what it feels like and the clinical studies. But will they tell you the tools and tips to help? Some of them don't. Some of them just talk about it, and I think that kind of even stems from, us doing this podcast. It's like I've listened to podcasts and it's like, it's great. Like, awesome. I'm learning about this, and like the end of the interview, I'm going, like, can I ask a question? Because no one's asking the question like, okay, well, how do we do X, or where do we get to Y? Like,
well, I actually, that's kind of an interesting question, because I wonder if we can't put the pieces together to actually use the information and slow ourselves down enough to look at the information, to actually integrate the information and actually utilize the tools, then you're really just consuming. And I wonder if that's part of the issue too, is that we're just so consumer driven for everything. And it doesn't matter what space you're in, whether you're in, wherever you are. That's the world of business, and creating things doesn't keep going unless people consume it. But it's like, when does the consumption stop, and then you integrate the wisdom? Because that's where I've realized that I'm at. Like, I'm actually at the integration stage. And during this integration stage, I've listened to several books. Like, I've been recently listening to The Body Keeps the Score, because I still haven't finished the audiobook yet. And it's very helpful. And I will say this. We had a guest on very long time ago now, probably I think it might have been in like the episodes of the 80s or 90s. Our yoga friend from Glens Falls, grounded on Glen Street.
Yeah. Kayla.
Yoga Kayla talked about how The Body Keeps the Score is part of their yoga teacher training, and they have to read this book.
Right. Yep.
And I've realized now why that book should be on the agenda and in the curriculum of every human service there is, because we don't know a lot of this stuff, or we don't even think about it.
I do think I would even that what is it? What Happened to Me?
Oh, What Happened
Dr.
to
Bruce
You?
Perry?
Yeah, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah.
That's a really, really good one too, because
that should probably end up on some human service shelves.
Definitely,
for sure.
It just, again, a few weeks ago we talked about who are you and why you do these things, and what, and that book to me is like, it really, really cracks things open. And I think, again, by learning these things and understanding these things, that's when you can develop some compassion. Because, to let's say a teacher, because I remember there was one part of the book where it was a male teacher and a male student, and the teacher, friendly, just trying to, just do his job and like be kind, like put his hand on the kid's shoulder, and the kid freaked out.
Yeah.
So some teachers,
and the whole reason was because he was wearing the same cologne that the person who abused him was wearing.
Right.
And it was,
and some teachers would be like, "Oh, this kid, get him out of class. He's out of control. He needs to be punished." And it's like, if you knew, I mean.
Right, like knowing people's triggers. It's hard to know everybody's triggers.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Right, it's impossible to. But I'm saying to have some kind of a understanding and openness to go, hey, you know what? My gut reaction is to get this kid out of class. No, let's be open to saying, hey, I noticed so and so did this when I did this. Let's talk with the school psychologist maybe, and have them come in and evaluate the kid maybe, or whatever. Like, let's take different steps, different action. That's all I'm saying. Like, I know we can't know everything, but we can be a little bit more kind, be a little bit more different in the way we handle it.
Everything can be used as a teaching moment. If you have someone who can stand back enough to recognize it as such. And we can all do that. It's just that we don't.
No, it is. I'll admit. I mean, it's hard when you're in that moment, but I think certain people in certain positions have a bit of a responsibility.
Well, I think we all have responsibility. Not just you can't pin one thing on one.
I'm not saying one,
but because again, like you also have to realize that like sometimes the benefit of the whole is going to negatively affect some. It just is. That's just the law of the law of balance and stuff, man. It just, unfortunately, that's what happens.
Yeah,
but everything can be used as a teaching moment if you can slow down enough to find the wisdom in those teaching moments, and if you have somebody that's in and is fully involved in it. Because I don't think most people, like, again, like, you think about anything that we do during the day. You're not completely 100% present for everything you do all day.
Right.
I know I'm not. I'll openly admit I'm not. I just, unfortunately, like, I just don't have that capability to stay 100% present.
But some of the factors in why both of us don't have it and other people don't have that brain capacity is because we have these other stressors and these other things that are taking up space,
Sure.
And we aren't proactive in cleaning up that mental clutter, So that would be a piece for me that fell because we stopped somewhere along the line. We stopped paying attention. That we stopped saying, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna cut back your in school your activity time. What do they call it when you go recess? We're gonna cut back on recess. We're only gonna give you 10 minutes." It's like, like. Actually, we should give you like 45 minutes for recess because that's a very valuable thing. Like you said, it's a teachable moment. Like learning, playing, that's, you know what I mean? They're kids. So if we take away that sort of thing and get back into this and we got to focus on test score, you're creating a monster.
Well, that's what we've done. And that's what we've steadily and fastly approaching.
And then we go, why is this happening? We scratch our head. Why is this happening? Well, I can tell you why. It doesn't take a professional. I mean, it's like you can't do that to kids.
Well, that's that whiplash reaction, too, of things. Because if you were to stop concentrating on test scores, then, they would be like,
I'm not saying to stop concentrating on it. I'm saying to give shared consideration to these other things.
I agree. There's a lot of issues that we could tackle very early on.
But I just think that
parenting is definitely one of them. Because again, like if and I will say this, and I wish I wish there was a parenting course out there to teach people how to be an active and aware parent. Because if you're not aware of your own bullshit, then you should not have children. I'm sorry. You may not like my answer, and all these people who keep adding to their family brood for whatever reason there is, okay? That's your business. But I'm going to say this. If you have not looked at yourself in the mirror and cleaned up your shit, you should not be having kids because all you're going to do is affect them in the same way. And I see it.
And I think some, I'm not saying everybody. I do think some people that having that child is part of that process. For me,
it was. It can be.
For me, it was because I don't know if I would have diligently stuck to certain things had it not been for I had a child. And you know what? Hey, as I'm learning this stuff, I'm going to pass this down. I know what I went through. I don't want this child to go through it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, but you don't know these things, you know what I mean, until you know them, I guess. So it's tough to, you could take a class, but I don't know, until you're in, I think it has to, yes, that's good stuff, but I think as a more of a macro has to change. I think,
Well, dude, you can't change the macro if you don't change the micro. It doesn't work that way. You don't change the big picture without changing the small picture. It just doesn't happen.
Oh, well,
because you can try to change the macro all you want, but you've said this you can't change the way everybody acts or thinks. So you can't change the macro if you don't change the micro.
Well, I'm saying in specific like a education system setting.
Well, again, education, yes, okay. Education is when you send your child off to school, but you have that first 5 years.
Oh yeah,
to set up. But if you haven't cleaned up your own shit,
right? But I'm saying
you've already put that in there.
I'm saying like eventually. So when that kid goes to school, okay, he's going to go through the system, blah blah blah, come out. He's going to be a little bit better than the last generation. So then that one is now grown up. He's going to have a kid, and then the parent is going to be a little bit more in tune than the last generation. So he's going to help his kid a little bit more for those 5 years. Then that kid's going to go through the system.
We
and
hope
then learn more and more.
We hope so.
And then right.
I don't see that. I don't see that. I think
if things are put in place, absolutely.
It starts at home. It starts at home and then works its way out.
It does.
And I don't think
but
that...
But I'm saying we've tried that route and it doesn't seem to be working. So I think in order to start at home, you have to have somewhat of a stable, somewhat healed human, in the household.
That's my point, is that you have to really and again, that's part of being mindful and maybe part of being in tune with oneself, right? We talked about low self-esteem.
Right.
Like, we talk about all these issues, and a lot of these issues that are societal issues, cultural issues, are based on our negative opinions of ourselves. A lot of them. And they're played at. Why do girls get pregnant at a young age? And why do men think that it's okay to not take responsibility for things? And it becomes this issue of a girl might get pregnant early because A, it's a mistake and they were kids, just messing around, or B, in her mind, she may have low self-opinion, just like the man may have low self-opinion of his, and he thinks he needs to dominate the situation. Like, there's all these things at play.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
And unless you have... And a kid can't decipher this. Kids can't decipher this. So that means they have to have adults that can do this. And you can't just lay it at the feet of the education system. Because it does start at home. It starts with us. And again, most of us have kids without having...
Right, but I'm saying is...
Without having the ability to look at ourselves at first.
But it's easy for someone to say it all starts at home and then not have a teenager that, doesn't listen, doesn't give a shit about what you say. It's super easy to fucking sit here and say that.
I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not pointing fingers, because guess what?
I know you're not.
As a kid, as a parent, we all go through those stages.
But I'm not saying so. You're kind of black and white. I'm not saying have it just in the education system. I'm saying that it needs to be a base in the education system, because sooner or later, when that kid goes through the education system, he's going to grow up. And then they're going to have a family, and if they have a child, then they can do a little bit better. And like I said before, it's just going to progressively get better. Nothing's changing. We've been doing A for how many years, and nothing's working. So we're going to continue to do A again. That's the definition of insanity.
Well, I think the reason why A doesn't work is because everybody has an opinion about how A is working, and we don't agree on anything anymore. And we've never. Granted, we've never. Maybe we've never agreed on everything. Anyway,
no one's going to agree on everything, but that's when.
But we don't even have common truths anymore, because now common truths are left to say, "Oh, well, that's false," because I don't agree with it. Because that's really what we've gotten to in the society, is because
but we've talked about this. You just get. If you're talking children and education, you get statistics and you get results and all these things. And
right, but what are you basing the results on? Our education system now bases the results on test scores, right? Across the board. Not the best.
No, it's not.
Absolutely, it never was. But I will say, when I went to school, and you went to school, obviously, we crossed a certain threshold at a certain point. But the reason why we crossed that threshold is because people our age decided to keep pushing this. And that's the problem too, man. This is the problem you have. You don't even have the same things going into the same education systems anymore. So you're never going to get somebody to buy into emotional regulation education, because everybody's going to think that their way is better. And again, like that goes to that begs the question as to whether public schools or private schools. Private schools can teach whatever they want because they're private. You pay for an education.
Right.
They can teach you whatever they want. But everybody bitches about public education and about how public education preaches this or that or the other thing. Because it's public education, because you have more people in public education than you do in private education. And again, like in some of these school programs, you have a better emotional-based curriculum, where there are schools that can do this.
Yeah, no, they're definitely incorporating that into some of the health classes and stuff that I'm aware of. So it's we've made steps in the right direction, I feel.
I just don't know if, again, like unfortunately, I don't know if we can keep saying that the next generation is going to do it or the next generation is going to do it. And again, we also know that forcing it down people's throats don't work either. So it's like, how do you get people to have their come to Jesus moment without having to say, I came to Jesus and he saved me? Because that's another part of this thing too, is that we all, because we've talked about this. We talked about this in the last episode about separation of self and how we have low self-opinion. And it's like, because we think everything is outside of us. We think everything's outside of us, including somebody else needing to save us. The only person that's saving you is you. And again, if you're going to teach personal responsibility, then you have to realize that saving those pieces of you is up to you.
Right.
So, and it's not always up to you as a child. It's not, because you don't have the ability to take care of yourself. And I will say this, man. I've been basically on my own since I was 15, taking care of myself. But I wasn't emotionally mature to handle a lot of the stuff that I had to deal with.
No, of course
Hence the
not.
reason why I have the problems I have. But it's like I'm forced to clean it all up. And realized, unfortunately, maybe late, maybe not, that a lot of that shit I've infected the rest of my plants with.
I mean,
and those are pieces that, unfortunately...
Yeah, but I don't know if I would say you infected things with it, because, I mean, you're learning and you're growing. So as long as you continue to learn and grow and incorporate that into what you're doing, then, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about doing. You know what I mean? It's that when you say that other way, like, oh, I've already damaged things, that's, to me, that's more of a fixed mindset. Like, oh, well, I damaged it. It's already done.
Well, no, I didn't say it was already done.
No, I'm just saying, like...
But I agree. It is a fixed mindset. It
like
is.
Where if you... Well, like, we're working at it. As you know, this isn't... You know, I don't know if healing ever ends. You know what I mean? It's a continuous process. And as we're healing, as we are learning and growing, then we can do better, obviously. And we try to incorporate that into... you know, our relationships and our interpersonal relationships. So, you know, we just kind of, when we know better, we can do better. But I guess what I'm saying is why I always kind of err to the side of the education system is because most people don't know this stuff, you know. So if we teach it, you know, I didn't, like, I'm 40 years old, I'm learning about emotions. I mean, I didn't know any of this shit. I was like, life sucks. My life sucks, and these are the cards I was dealt. That's it. But that's not it. It's like, yeah, my life sucked, but you know what? Did it really suck? And if it did, who's going to make it better? Me. Like you said, no one else is going to do it for me.
And why did it suck?
Exactly. You know what I mean? So you got to figure these things out. But again, if I didn't if there was never like a aha crisis, whatever moment, then maybe I would have continued down that shitty path and, stumbled on rocks and just was miserable.
So here's a question for you as we wrap this up. Do we ever stop healing? Does healing ever complete? Or does it complete on your death day?
If you're, my opinion, it doesn't end.
You think there's always something to heal?
Yep. I do. I mean,
I'm curious. I was curious about that.
I mean, I think it's individualistic. It's certain people may not. Certain people may be more susceptible to things growing up, and certain people aren't, and certain people had more healthy childhood and grew up to be somewhat of a decent human being. And
I don't think having a shitty childhood makes you not a decent human being.
No, but
because there's a certain part of that where, again, if we're going to talk about self-responsibility, you got to be able to look at yourself. I'm
just saying, but it's just more weight. It's just more hurdles that you have to get over. That's all.
Yeah, I get that.
You know what I mean? So I'm saying, as far as like the healing, like the more hurdles you have, the longer it's going to take to heal. I think.
Do you think that healing actually creates a better tomorrow for yourself, or do you think it just leads to more suffering in a way? Because now you've pulled the Band-Aid off the cut, and now you're forced to take it all.
I think it's both. I think ultimately it leads to a better tomorrow, but especially in the beginning stages, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I personally feel that the healing journey can be worse than what you need to be healing. I think the journey itself, like the healing process, I should say, the process itself can be worse because you're asking yourself questions. You're digging up things that you may not have even known were there. And then when you dig them up, then you have to look at them.
Right, you're forced to look at them.
You're holding them. And it's like, okay, now I'm the architect. You know what I mean? And then further along the process of your healing, guess what? Now I'm the sculptor. You know what I mean? Are you ready to sculpt? Let's go. Let's do it. It's your life. Let's sculpt it. Let's do it. I don't know. For some people, I think healing doesn't end. I think it's definitely going to be less invasive eventually. I think there's pieces to life, whether, again, everyone's different, but if somebody wants a family, travel, whatever, and if they're able to do those things, that's going to obviously make, life a little bit better. If that makes sense. I don't know if those are the words I should use, but I sometimes healing is you're missing pieces.
Right, you're missing pieces.
You're missing
and I
pieces,
and I think that's a good way to kind of bring this home, because it's those missing pieces that you have to uncover. And again, like we've seen this in the Goonies. Where they were looking for One-Eyed Willie's treasure, right? Mm-hmm. And they didn't have the whole thing, and he was trying to put it all together. And it's those little points that we put together. But what happens when you don't have the piece of the map? You have to go digging for it,
right?
And you hope to find it.
And I think through the process, you may be missing some pieces to the puzzle, or you may be missing a corner to your map. And I think that with, if you're open to learning with books, just life experiences and situations, and looking within, combine these things. I think you can find that treasure without having that full map. You may have to, lose a few fingers maybe in the process, but you can do it.
Yeah,
It may not be ideal. It may not be something that you envisioned, but sometimes you have to play that keyboard, with the skull keyboard, and and take the chance, take the risk.
What pieces are you trying to find? What pieces are you trying to take out and look at? You're trying to sculpt some pieces. You're trying to fix some pieces.
Put some pieces together.
Put some pieces together. It's like
Maybe
Legos.
Would you think get rid of some pieces?
Yeah, sometimes you got to get rid of pieces too, man. Sometimes you got to get rid of pieces and create all new pieces.
Right. Like you said, you can combine, if there's half a piece or whatever, you can combine it with, make a fresh piece that is going to be more sustainable, more helpful to the path that you're currently on. I
agree. So make sure you pick up all those pieces, because you never know. Just like screws in your toolbox, man. You never know when you're going to use them. So keep the pieces, put them someplace. And a lot of pieces, you'll be like, oh yeah, I already know what this goes to. I know what this goes to.
Sure, yeah.
But it's those pieces that you don't know what they go to that may hold the key to opening a whole new puzzle for yourself. And isn't life about solving puzzles? I mean, isn't that why we went nuts about Rubik's Cube years and years ago, and now it's come back again? Of course.
Yeah.
Everything new, everything old.
Scooby-Doo certainly thought so.
Absolutely. Well, it's time.
It's time.
It's time to...
Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate your support. We appreciate the people that do listen, that follow us, that engage with our social media. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can always shoot us an email. You can review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. What else?
Find us on all the socials: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Some of our social media has changed a little bit because, unfortunately, our distribution company Libsyn has changed their platform, and I keep forgetting to set up that it distributes to all the social media.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I keep forgetting that's an added piece that I need to set up now, and it's not just automatic like where it goes.
It's all right.
But it's good. It's cool. I like the new system. I like the new setup.
We're still learning, Will.
We're still
putting the pieces together.
We're always learning. We're always still putting the pieces together. So until next week, get well.
Be safe.
Stay above.
Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.